Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope that you are feeling really wonderful today. I'm so happy to be welcoming you over to my YouTube channel and talking about one of the most incredible, most rare, and most influential astrological transits that we can have. Yes, I'm talking about the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius during the solstice of 2020. So winter solstice for the northern hemisphere, summer solstice for the southern hemisphere. This transit is going to drastically change the game. It's going to very much refine and redefine the landscape of our lives, our ideas, our philosophies, our trends, our politics, our collectives, our systems. Everything is going to start to feel very different as we start to associate ourselves with very different norms and customs. So I've got a lot to talk about relating to this incredible transit today. If you're new, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn the bell notifications on, because there are many exciting transits coming up and into the new year that I think that you guys will be really excited to usher in with me here on the channel. I would also like to give a quick shout out to all of our supporters over on Patreon. Thank you so much to everyone who is currently supporting this channel on Patreon. Without that support, none of these videos would be possible, so very much gratitude to everyone over there. If you would like to get bonus content as well as support the continuance of these videos, be sure to check out the Patreon page, which I will link below and in the top right hand corner now. So let's dive right in, everyone. I will have a few video chapters laid out over different segments of this video. But what I'm going to talk about first is some of the traditional insights and then bridge it into some of the intuitive messages that I'm feeling. So Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happen once every 20 years. So this is a transit that feels very rare, and at the same time it happens a few times in people's lives. So it's not quite as rare as the Saturn return, which happens about every 30 years, but it happens every 20 years. So it still is something that people only go through a few times in their lives. And astrologers have been, philosophizing and, considering the ideas behind this transit for a long time now, because we've known up to Saturn for a very long time. Of course, thinking about each of the planets is important in understanding the significance of this transit. When they come together, it is not really seen as positive or negative, because there are very good and also sometimes pretty bad things that happen with this conjunction. It's kind of like one of those chaotic neutral energies that we are definitely catching on to when we have this conjunction, because it's just going to cause a ripple and an impact across the board. So we have the planet Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius, and Jupiter is about optimism, philosophy, law, higher knowledge, academics, scholarly insights, and also the human mind expanding past the human condition. Whereas Saturn is the antithesis to Jupiter. It is the ruler of Capricorn, and it is about pragmatism. It's about status quo and the conservation of ideas, customs, and norms that have already been established. So there's not much need for that expansive thought, because the current established ways need conservation. So, and Saturn is then also about more traditional forms of power, more traditional forms of authority as well. And it is about constriction and limitation. All right. Jupiter and Saturn both represent necessary aspects of human life. We have to have expansion and contraction. If you think of the process of birth, without both of those, there is no life. So when these two planets come together, it is like a creation of new life. It is like a birthing process. So one of the most incredible manifestations of that is, yes, like the birth of a new purpose, the birth of a new potential, the birth of a new motivation. And we're going to be seeing that across the board in every single sector of life, especially being that this is happening in the sign of Aquarius, which is also about those types of things. But what we also usually see with these two planets coming together in conjunction once every 20 years tends to be a pretty vast shift in what the collective wants. So what is considered fashionable? What is considered a good life to live? What is considered the right way to live? What is considered, the honorable or integrity-based way to live. We have the very strict shaping of philosophy, the strict shaping of law, the strict shaping of dynamics with people into something that is not just a mentality, it's not just an internal subset, it is maybe like drafted into a real, tangible, wieldable object or experience or set of ways. And this can go like really good or it can go really bad. You know, you see in Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions the introduction of really hopeful, very helpful, very promise-filled actions, and then you can also see the the introduction of things that are very strict and very chafing and very disciplinarian. But I like to think personally that this is a very opportune transit one way or another, because it's very rare that Jupiter and Saturn are on the same page with things. So at the level of the individual, I think intuitively that we have a very rare opportunity for the entire time that this conjunction is in effect to actually bring opposing sides of ourselves together, to heal inner polarities, to understand purpose is the main thing. And that's actually been possible for the entire year of 2020, but it was more polarizing and more grating to consider it in 2020. But right as this conjunction comes in, it should really alleviate any friction with purpose or any resentment toward a better life or a better idea for yourself. That should start to really come into order. But what I also feel with it, it's kind of a catch-22 where there is all of this purpose, there is all of this potential, there is all of this drive or motivation that gets maybe stronger than you've ever felt it before. Though, again, there is a sense of sacrifice with it also, and a sense of, while pursuing purpose or while catching on or latching onto purpose, you have to sort of access a part of yourself that doesn't feel as comfortable. Again, Jupiter and Saturn, they don't like to be together. They don't like one another. They're antithetical to one another. It's not so much that they don't like each other, but they just are not very compatible. So the conjunction is really, it's not a great conjunction. It does happen every 20 years. It does have principle. It does have promise. It does have purpose, but it is also conflicting by nature. So I think that it's a sense of conflicted purpose. I think that it's also so easy with this conjunction to feel conflicted by society, especially being that it's in Aquarius, to feel conflicted by collectives, to feel collective conflict. There's going to be a lot of that comes up. And I think at the beginning, it will be really possible to solve that and to hopefully karmically walk right out of it. Because what is better than collective conflict is more of a scholarly or scientific marketplace of ideas. That feels really, really wonderful. Jupiter, Saturn conjunct in Aquarius, a marketplace of ideas where there are different ideas coming together that prove one another wrong or right through merit. So merit with this particular conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn is going to be vital, because Aquarius is about science. It's about exploration. It's about collectives, yes, and society. So societal issues overcome through a marketplace of merit-based ideas feels to be the best way to wield this energy. Though, of course, it is possible to go a few other ways with it as well, where it's more, I also feel a big technological component to this conjunction. There's a big sense of automation. I like to say that the signs Aquarius and Pisces are like robots and aliens. We leave the human condition at Capricorn. So it's also important to think about that with this conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, because Capricorn is the last human sign. Okay, so right at 0 degrees Aquarius, we move out of the human condition. So Jupiter and Saturn are conjoining right outside, right past the border of human condition. So with that in mind, I think that we have to think about some of the more inanimate features of our lives, and also about the other forms of consciousness that are becoming more prevalent now. Automation comes to mind, technology comes to mind, also psychic abilities come to mind, networks come to mind, communication through ways that are not physical come to mind. And with that, also another huge intuitive message that I'm getting about this conjunction is that we are getting a little bit out of the realms of gravity also. So I don't mean this physically. Obviously, we're not physically getting out of the realms of gravity. But what I'm feeling is that the tried and true way of achieving the status quo way of putting together a reality, the, sort of very traditional steps taken to get somewhere is going to sort of fade out. And there's going to be very eccentric, very different ways of goal achieving, of accomplishing, because Jupiter and Saturn are both planets of accomplishments. They're both planets of goals and getting from one point to another. That's what they have in common. So being that they're coming together, I think that we have to look at their common grounds, which both are planets that deal with personal power and, I mean, group power, but just power in general. Both deal with getting, how do I get from this point to that point? How do I fill in the gaps? How do I move from here to there? Both of those planets deal with that. And then both planets also then deal with philosophies and mantras and personal themes and what mindsets and motivations and such things do we use to, also aid us. So religion comes up, because that has a big impact on how people move through life also. Anything motivational or spiritual or inspirational that propels us to make certain choices based on an exterior impact needs to really be seen, I think, clearly now, so that we can know what does and doesn't help us. So basically what this conjunction creates for everybody is a second look at how you're motivated, a second look at how things are motivating. Because let's think of the word motivation and what it means to be motivated. So motivation does not in and of itself mean something positive. We think of motivation culturally as something that, makes us feel strong and, capable of getting somewhere. But a motivate is kind of like the word manipulate. They're like neutral words, but they have connotations, but truthfully, they're neutral. So we can be motivated in positive or negative ways. We can be motivated by any type of stimulus. Every type of stimulus, I guess, has a certain motivation that we experience. So seeing that something is a positive source of motivation, I would watch out for that, okay? Thinking about what is a positive source of motivation or what is a negative source of motivation, because at this time you should be able to come out and see that actually some of the more difficult things that have happened to you have led you to make positive changes. Likewise, some of the things that you thought were more good might have led you or motivated you to make more negative changes. So we're trying to really even out the balance. As I've said, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius is a karmic zero. It's a karmic reset. So by getting to this time, you should have some amount of insurance that you are kind of needing to get a reset. You're kind of needing to rethink things and re-establish where you are. Because we've had a lot of time in the year of 2020 to reground ourselves, to sit and rethink our experiences and our motivations and where we've landed. And then this conjunction comes in and it's like a grand reset. Everything from norms to customs to ideas to politics to collectives, networks, connections, innovations, humanities, all of these things are resetting now, and we have to now understand our purpose inside of it and inside of our world. So connecting to the world, connecting to purpose, bringing all of these things together, because we've learned over the last few years with Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto and Capricorn how to consolidate, how to wrap things together, how to value our own efforts, okay? And with that sense of value, we might consolidate a few more things over the next few months. And then as this conjunction comes in, and let me go ahead and pull up the chart for you. As the conjunction comes in, that's when the alchemy kind of really starts to happen too. So things can actually kind of transpose. There can be transmutation, transformation, transfixing going on. The symbolism of Aquarius is the water bearer, pouring water from one container to another. And that is something that I think a lot of us will take on, where we take the energy that we've put into one thing and we transpose or put it into another. This may not happen immediately at the outset of the conjunction, but this is probably a catalyst experience that gets our minds in that direction, where we start to kind of dip into certain places. We start to see what is and isn't working, and then we understand actually that maybe a field of study that we were in, or a career that we had, or a relationship that we had has actually given us the perfect experience to pull that energy back out and place it elsewhere. That's going to be the main thing. Is I see a lot of people having a change in industry, change in career, change in relationship, change in living environment, as they pull the energy out of the previous and begin to place it into the new. And as I'm looking at the chart, I'm loving what I'm seeing, actually. This is very positive. This is very grand. This is very optimistic and hopeful. So we've got this incredible Jupiter-Saturn conjunct at 0 degrees and 31 and 32 minutes of Aquarius. And then we've got this perfect sort of sextile energy on both sides from Venus in Sagittarius and Moon and Chiron and Mars in Aries, okay, when this conjunction starts. So it's really important in astrology to take into account the entire picture, especially when a big transit like this first goes into place. So this is starting out with a lot of fire energy around us, and that's why I've been interpreting it as an alchemization of purpose, shall we say, or a new beginning relating to purpose, because the fire signs, especially Sagittarius and Aries, are about pioneering, what we want our energy to go to, and how we're motivated. So starting right out December 21st on the solstice, most of us will probably have a completely uncontextual new field of energetic focus standing right in front of us. And this feels completely beautiful. It feels completely in alignment with our soul purpose, but it might also be shocking to the senses. So I will warn you that come December 21st, and probably echoing for about maybe even 2 months after, so until Aquarius season, there's going to be a really neat time once we get into 2021 where Aquarius season comes up and plays with the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction. And of course, we'll be talking all about that on this channel. Make sure that you're subscribed below to get that correspondence then. But what I'm feeling here, especially on the other side of it, so before we get to this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, while we're still having Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn, this is hard for us to interpret. We feel this coming on. As I've said before, I've compared this to having been in a dark tunnel for like 3 years, and finally you can see that light at the end of the tunnel. You can see those first few beams of light, and it hurts your eyes at first. It's hard to perceive something that is good when you've been in darkness for a while. You know what I mean? So things that feel a little bit painful right now, things that feel risky or worrisome or disconnected, are probably positive, but it's hard for us to really reconcile it at this point. How I feel this to manifest into the real world and into real life is actually with a little bit of problems. Okay, so from the point of the beginning of December until December 21st, I want everyone to be as careful as possible, because there can be weird experiences as this energy is transitioning. To me, the image that I see is like kind of beating your head against a brick wall. Like we're still in the confines of the Capricorn energy while we see that there's an expansive alchemical energy oncoming. So we might be trying to kind of go through things that we can't go through right now, thinking that a door is unlocked when it isn't. If you can imagine like walking through a hallway and you think that you know it so well, like for any of you, like if you've moved into a new house and you're walking through it in the dark, you think that you know it, but then you like run into a wall or you run into something. That's kind of what the energy is like leading up to this transition. So watch out for making any huge changes prior. If you've already done it, it's fine. But with this knowledge now, try to really get your sea legs on the other side of it before anything like gets too crazy or gets too different now, because that's what I'm feeling. It's like running into a wall, running into a hard surface unexpectedly is the energy leading up to it. But I'm feeling that, you know, as soon as the solstice, so December 21st, there's such a sense of immediate relief. There's such a sense of immediate progress, immediate results, immediate purpose-oriented, soul purpose achievement for some people. So this looks like good decisions to me that we're making, right when we get to this solstice time. This is looking like capability. This is looking like enjoying what you're doing, finding a new hobby, finding a new pursuit, a new field of study, a new job, a new, entrepreneurial idea could be incredible with Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius. The ideas that we're getting at that time seem golden. And then also still having an echo of all that tangible Capricorn energy. It's like we can still take the lessons that we learned over the last few years and apply them to this incredible new insight that we receive. Also, there is something very formulaic about the energy. So those of you who are good at math will really do well with Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. For people who are very good strategizers, for people who take a strategic mentality toward the future, this is where you will shine. This is where you will start to understand your own motives and your own ideas and how those come together as a formula. So studying math could be good for everybody. Trying to do formulas, trying to make your ability at computation better. Also understanding not just math for numbers' sake, but taking a more of a mathematical tone to experiences. Okay, so when I was in this place or with these people, that happened. That's a math equation. A lot of what we talk about on this channel is our math equations. When I went through that time, when I went through, September of 2020 and put myself in that position, this result happened. That's math. Astrology is a kind of math as well, talking about degrees, talking about geometry, talking about planetary alignments and angles. It's very mathematical, and that is also why Aquarius rules astrology, and Uranus, they both have a type of rulership over astrology and any type of math. So it is going to be an astrologer's time as well with this transit. So astrologers should do well. Mathematicians, scientists, explorers, any type of a geographer as well, understanding geography in a new way, the implications and significance of geography and locations and how they tie together. And then also chefs. So I've talked a lot about how recipes will play a big role in the Jupiter-Saturn conjunct in Aquarius. And that's very important to take into account also. What are we adding into a situation and what is it creating? Because cooking is a form of alchemy. Also, we talked about how Aquarius rules alchemy. So what ingredients are you putting into your meals? What ingredients or nutrients in your body create health? This is all a recipe, all alchemy, and all of these things need focus. And then we're getting into math also, as cooking is mathematical. So do you see how everything is kind of coming back together, and how Aquarius is kind of very shifty also, where as it turns out, astrology is math. As it turns out, cooking is alchemy. As it turns out, alchemy is strategy. As it turns out, strategy is conceptualization. As it turns out, conceptualization is a result of intrinsic instinct and soul purpose. And then what does that made of? And we start to get this very type of hypothetical insight where we're forming a lot of ideas, and this is why scientific discoveries are very likely also. So cures to diseases, scientific discoveries, cures to old diseases, any type of innovation, the creation of new technology, new patents, new ideas. This is all Aquarian areas. So knowing this and understanding this, what do you have to create? What do you have to strategize? What are you creating in your life, and what is the recipe for it? What ingredients are you going to use to create a certain status or create a certain plane or point of being? All right. And how and in what ways, and this is really a good train of thought with Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius. In what way are you least likely to be banging your head against a brick wall to achieve something? All right. There are much more creative ways to get where we want to be. There are much more alchemic recipes to follow to get that flavor or get that health that we've been needing for so long. Watch out for following the traditional recipes. They have their place, and maybe that's just what some of us need to do to get back to health. But I feel that there are going to be new recipes, new ingredients, new ways of getting to a certain point of health and prosperity, which will be really interesting to create for yourself, perhaps even too. And then also With that might come as a negative, like problematic experiments. So people experimenting with their health or experimenting with their well-being and having a negative result. So watch out for getting too crazy with it. Watch out for getting too unconventional or too out of the human condition. Because again, that's the negative of this transit, is we might sacrifice our humanity or forget our humanity and forget that, yes, a human body needs all this sleep and all this food and all of this, socialization and all of these different things that are necessary to sustain human life. That can be lost with this transit. So we can just focus on our career, just focus on creating, that perfect engineering marvel that concludes plastic waste in water bottles, and then with that, we then don't think about the water that's even in the bottle. It's about the manufacturing of the bottle. And then the water that's in it somehow is creating a problem. And you have to take a very holistic approach with this transit. It's 11th house energy. So nothing can be forgotten. The analysis has to be complete. And when we're creating a product, or when we're creating our own health, or creating our own schedule or our own life, it has to be holistic, and every feature and every facet has to be streamlined and connected in and consolidated, as we learned over the last 3 years how to consolidate, and fused now with the Aquarius. We go from consolidation to fusing. That's incredible. And successfully, we then transform and transcend out of the old trials and tribulations that we've faced historically. And then also there will be certain outlying or certain things that fall away. So there's a sort of like, also with the negative vibration of this dogma, there's a certain dogma that comes from it. There's a certain rejection of that which is not on trend or on brand or on, the appearance of all these principles of, progress and capability and, creating new levels of civility as well. As I would expect, an entirely new, unbefore-seen expansion and trend around civilization, around what is civil, around what is a way of being courteous, what is a way of connecting with others. I would definitely predict a completely new surge and a completely new wave of ways that humans interact with one another, ways that people implement themselves into society. That which is a class system would also see a complete reformation with this transit. Anything relating to old status quo, traditional experiences, conservation of old ways is besieged by this transit, and then held and reformed and transmuted, transfixed into an object or symbol of something completely different. So that can be good or bad. Again, that's not necessarily good or bad. It depends on the circumstance. It depends on what is being done in what way. But it's just important to, I think, coming into this transit, because it's going to take trial and error to see what really happens. I mean, I can predict here and there. I'm really not a super predictive astrologer. I kind of like to look at how things are in the present and then kind of take that as a foreshadowing and thinking, okay, with this momentum, we might see this or that. But I'll need to kind of get into the new year to really get a better idea. Though what my opinion is right now, given the current momentum that we face, is just a very large emphasis, popular emphasis, placed on no longer falling into old and historical pitfalls, and doing whatever it takes to evolve technologically, doing whatever it takes to evolve formulaically, and discerning those formulas and reapplying them in many different places with slight alterations is really what I see. And that, of course, could have many different results depending on the application. But it's not really good or bad. It's not, Aquarius transcends thoughts of good or bad. We get into things like, okay, what was the natural or karmic momentum of something? So has what has happened been something good or bad? Well, it depends on, what came before and then what also comes after. It takes a lot of holistic thinking to decide. But on that note, I would definitely also think that the concept of good and the concept of bad would also face fervent transitions and reapplications also. So our minds can get a little bit squandered by this energy too, where we are rethinking what is good or bad, or we are rethinking integrity. I've talked, that's why we've been talking on my channel and on my Patreon page about integrity this entire year, because that can, for some of us, be our only saving grace. And it will really allow us to facilitate a truly creative and truly hypothetical environment with which we can actually bring to life and birth as a people and as a species something that is truly helpful and monumentally and monolithically momentous in a way that transcends and transmutes certain long-running chaos that had previously gone unsolved historically. So on that note, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this quick channeling and study on the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius at 0 degrees. I'm going to be talking more about this on my channel, moving closer and closer to it. I just thought it was about time I got a video about it, period. But the energy is still kind of distant as I'm putting this out on December 4th, 2020. So I still need to kind of feel a little bit more. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts on this transit are and what you're feeling coming on. I would love to hear your thoughts about this interpretation also. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that subscribe button and thumbs up the video so that it gets out. Share it with someone you love. Everybody is actually realizing that this great conjunction has a certain significance happening on the solstice, 2020. It's happening in 2020 and it only happens once every 20 years. So it adds another 20 onto this triple 2020 year. So, and also happening on December 20th and 21st. So I guess it's a quadruple 20. So 2020. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much. I have more videos below as well. Be sure to jump over to my channel if you'd like to look into what else is here. I have a video about Saturn. I'm working on one for Jupiter as well, if you wanted to know more about the planets themselves. And on that note, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again soon. Much love. Bye.